This is the Boston College Golden Eagle team that made a bowl game last season, and now with Jeff Hafley gone, he's now with the Green Bay Packers. Bill O'Brien is in. Was once going to be Ohio State offensive coordinator, saw the BC opening and decided to take this job, and he inherits one of the more interesting teams in college football this year. A hard non-conference schedule awaits, but can the Boston College Eagles get back to a bowl game in 2024? You're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. I want to welcome you to my channel and welcome you to Prediction Season. It's where I predict all 134 FBS level college football teams. That is my goal this summer, which means you should totally watch, especially if you're as big of a college football nerd as I am. Thank you so much for watching this video and all my other videos throughout prediction season as well. And there are so many more ways than just simply watching my video, even though it supports my channel in more ways than you can even imagine. You can subscribe and ring the bell because, hey, if I haven't done your favorite team yet, I'm going to. You got to know what I have to say about your favorite team. You can like, you can comment, you can share, and literally anything else you do to interact with the channel helps to support what I do here on YouTube, and I greatly appreciate each and every one of you for doing so. Let's talk about the Eagles here in 2024, but before we do that, you got to know how we're going to talk about them. We're going to dive on into the team's offense, we'll dive on into the team's defense, and at the end of the video, we will go through the team's football schedule, and we will give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. But I do have a couple more notes before we start. Right over here are going to be the team stats they put up either offensively or defensively last season, and of course, for your viewing pleasure, dear viewer, right below the team's logo, I have put the team's coaching staff. And I just had to fix one small typo that I saw. But now, with no further ado, let's talk about Boston College in 2024. We obviously will start with the offense. Since the offense had a really good run game last year, but the pass game was inconsistent. They didn't even throw for 2,500 yards as a team last season. And they are losing Emmett Morehead, a guy that could have been the starter here, didn't end up being that. He completed 15 out of his 30 passing attempts last season for 124 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. Again, was not that starter for this team last year. Nonetheless, that is some depth gone in the quarterback room as he is transferred out to another program that I will tell you where it is here in a second. He is transferred over to Old Dominion, so going to go try to be the starting quarterback over there. Your starting quarterback from last year does come back, and that was Thomas Castellanos. Just clean things up there and make it look nicer. But Castellanos last year, very impressive runner. He was the leading rusher for this team last season, 1,113 yards and 13 touchdowns in 215 carries. Again, was also the team's quarterback, so obviously he led the team in passing, 2,248 yards, 15 touchdowns, but 14 picks. Those passing numbers, they could use a little bit of development. Now, there is no denying how good of a runner he is, and I'm sure Bill O'Brien and this offense under Will Lawing will be able to use him in pretty much every facet, either throwing the ball or running the ball. But you'd like to see his throwing game get a little bit more development. He had a long of 52. So he showed ability with the downfield ball, but only had 57% completion percentage. Again, only had 2,200 yards, 6.8 yards per completion. You want to get that number up. You want to cut back on the interceptions, increase that touchdown number there as well. Jacoby Robinson is back in this room, even though he didn't play much last season, if at all, I don't think. And Grayson James is coming in through the portal. He's coming over from Florida International FIU. But Castellanos will be that starting quarterback here. He's an exceptional runner, but if his pass game can develop and take that next step, this is the Boston College Eagle team that can see their fruitful successes on offense this season. Running back room, though, you do lose a lot of names here. Patrick Garwell was once a very, very good running back here for this team and thought to have been a candidate for a 1,000-yard rusher. In fact, he might have had a 1,000-yard season. He did back in 2021. He kind of tailed off towards the end of his Boston College Golden Eagle career. 270 yards and a touchdown, good for 4th on the team last season. You also do lose Andre Hines and Xavier Coleman, 2 more depth pieces in this running back room. Both of them have also found new homes through the transfer portal. But you do get your top 2 leading rushers among running backs back. Again, I already said Castellanos was that leading rusher for the team last year. Kai Robichaud is coming back, had 780 yards and 8 touchdowns last season. Alex Broom had 8 touchdowns. Or no, my apologies, I'm reading Robichaud's stat line all over again. Robichaud again, 780 yards, 8 touchdowns. Broom with 288 yards and 1 touchdown. And you get a couple guys come in through the transfer portal. Trayshawn Ward is a phenomenal pickup. The former Florida State Seminole and most recently Kansas State Wildcat is he might get that number one role. He might play behind Robichaud as that number two, but either way, he'll be a huge factor in this offense for Boston College. And then Jordan McDonald comes in from UCF as well. That's the University of Central Florida. Wide receiver room, you do lose another former UCF player in Ryan O'Keefe. He has since graduated. He has run out of eligibility. 5 carries for 40 yards and a touchdown last season, but 23 catches for 235 yards and a touchdown as a wide receiver last year. You also do lose Joseph Griffin and Jaden Williams to the portal. Both of them were top 5 receivers last year, with Joseph Griffin being the team's second leading receiver, 25 catches, 345 yards, and 1 touchdown. But none of those numbers compare to what Lewis Bond put up for this team last season. And again, while the stat number is not exceptional, he led the team, in fact, pretty much doubled the team in every major category. 52 catches, 646 yards, and 7 touchdowns. No one else had more than 1 receiving touchdown last season. Lewis Bond coming back is a huge get back for this wide receiver room. Dino Tomlin, Jaden Skeet, and Reed Harris also come back, while you also, again, get some guys from the transfer portal. Duran Bradley, a very talented player coming over from Texas Tech, and you get Jaden McGowan coming over from Vanderbilt as well, who can provide some depth to this room. In the tight end room, you do lose a couple names there. George Takis is going to be gone due to graduation. I probably butchered that last name, so I apologize sincerely. And Charlie Gordinier, I believe is how you say that last name. Again, I probably butchered that as well, but he is going to be gone through the transfer portal. To my knowledge, has not found a home yet, but probably will. He's a pretty solid player. Nonetheless, though, Gordiner last season was only the third leading receiver among tight ends. Takis, of course, was second, but you get your leading receiver among tight ends in Jeremiah Franklin back, 166 yards and a touchdown for him last year, and Kamari Morales is coming over from North Carolina in the transfer portal, pretty solid tight end in his own right. You lose a couple really good offensive linemen to the NFL in Christian Mahogany and Kyle Hergel, but who all comes back to this room? Well, you do get Jack Conley, Ozzie Trapilo, Logan Taylor, Jude Bowery, Kevin Klein, Drew Kendall, and Dwayne Alec, and a combination of those guys should be your starting offensive line here in 2024. No big additions from the portal to this Eagle offense, at least in the offensive line room. Castellanos, we know what he can do running the football, and especially with the addition of Trayshawn Ward, this is going to be a very dangerous rushing attack in the ACC. But if Castellanos can take that step in the right direction, again, getting Lewis Bond back is big, getting Bradley and McGowan over from the portal, you had 2 very good players there, Morales over from the portal, you get Franklin back, you have a lot of good pass catchers on this team. If the offensive line can also take a step up from where it was last season as well. Not that it's really a huge necessity. They only allowed 20 sacks last season, but it's up to Castellanos to take that next step forward in his passing game for this Eagle offense to take their next step in 2024. Let's talk about the Eagle defense here this upcoming season. And, it loses not a whole ton of talent. Again, not a lot of names on that side of the screen there on the players leaving side, but there are some pretty notable names leaving there as well. Shidasilla is gone off of the defensive line. He has gone through the transfer portal. He is transferred over to a Big Ten school in Purdue. You also lose another edge rusher in Josh Hardy, but didn't play much last year. And you do lose Chris Banks due to graduation. So there are a couple losses there on the defensive line for you. We'll get Silla's stats from last season, 14 tackles and 2 sacks for him last year. And then again, Chris Banks, the guy who's leaving due to graduation, 24 tackles and a sack for him. But you do get one of your better defensive linemen back. In fact, he might be one of the better defensive linemen the ACC has to offer. Donovan Ezeraku is back, and he is going to be one of the better defensive players on this team for next season. He was already the team's 4th leading tackler last year. Obviously, that led the defensive lineman as well. 53 tackles, 2 sacks, 1 pass defended. Hey, that sack number can definitely take a step up from where it was last year. This is the Boston College defense that only had 13 sacks last year. Those numbers have to improve, and it starts with Ezeraku here. He is going to be a huge force on this defensive line. He'll be joined by Cam Horsley, George Rooks, Neto Akpala, Edwin Kalanji, Quan Williams, Gilbert, I will butcher this last name, I guarantee you, Tongrongu, Try saying that one 5 times fast, as well as Sedarius McConnell coming over from Illinois in the portal, and so much more depth on this defensive line. But Ezeraku will be that leader here, and this is going to be a Boston College defensive line that should see improvement in 2024. You got a lot of returning players. The rush defense was not great last year. The pass rush was not great last year. Those numbers should improve in 2024. And it's going to be helped out by this linebacker room that, albeit, does lose Vinny DePalma, who, now, I'm not understating what he did for this defense. He was one of the better defensive players last year. In fact, led the team in tackles with 92, half a sack, 1 pass defended for him as well. But you get a lot of that linebacker talent back. Cam Arnold, Sione Hala, Jalen Blackwell, Davion Crouch, and a lot of other really solid names come back to this linebacker room, again, led by Cam Arnold, who was 3rd on the team in sacks last season. Defensive back room, you do lose a couple names here, including 2 guys to the NFL. Out of the cornerback room, you do lose Elijah Jones. And Jones last year, 9 passes defended. That led the team. 5 interceptions. That quintupled anyone else's number on the team. If you don't know what that is, that's times by 5. No one else had more. Basically, it's a fancy way of saying no one else had more than 1 interception. Elijah Jones had 5 of them last season. Very, very good player. That's an extremely talented corner that you do lose. And while you also do lose CJ Clinkscales, what a last name that is, through the transfer portal, he was a depth piece, still at double-digit tackles with 14, so a loss. But the other NFL guy you lose is your second leading tackler in John Pupple. He had 82 tackles in the pass defended from the safety position last year, so you lose 2 really good defensive backs that you will now see playing on Sundays. Take a look at what you have back in this defensive back room, though. For 2024, Amari Jackson, Jalen Cheek, Max Turner, all those guys come back in the cornerback room, as well as Brykees Brown, who was a transfer coming into this program to help bolster up this secondary. He is over from Georgia State. You get a couple transfers in the safety room as well, both of them hailing from Columbus. They're both coming from Ryan Day's squad in Ohio State. Cam Martinez and Ryan Turner will play big minutes here for this squad. In the safety position, you could use Ryan Turner as a corner as well. But in terms of returners, Cole Batson, Kari Johnson, KP Price, and Victor Nelson all return to the secondary. And kickers are people too. You have to show them some love. Sam Candani's back to do the punting, while Liam Connor is back to do the primary place kicking for BC in 2024. So overall, when you talk about the defense, again, I've already said the rush numbers have to improve. I should say the rush defense numbers have to improve. The pass rush numbers have to improve. There is a lot of talent on this defensive line. It starts with Ezeraku. There are some good pieces in the linebacker room. You did get some really good transfers, and I think Cam Martinez is going to play exceptional minutes for Boston College this season. But again, this was not a team that forced a lot of sacks last year. I don't even believe this is the team that forced a lot of turnovers. I think maybe 17 turnovers last season. And for as good as I should go back on that. 17 turnovers is actually a pretty solid number. It's a team that didn't force as many interceptions as you necessarily would have thought out of a team that, again, allowed under 200 passing yards per game, and you already lose 5 of those when Elijah Jones is gone. So, hey, the defense, can it force takeaways? Can it get sacks? Can it force pressure? That's a big thing to watch here, especially the play in the trenches for this BC defense in 2024. Let's talk about the Boston College football schedule now, and oh boy, as soon as my slide changed, yeah, this is a really difficult non-conference here for Boston College. And it's actually just a really difficult start of the season. We'll dive We'll dive into it all here in a little bit. But first, I got to tell you what everything on the schedule means. Any game at home will be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics. That is that slanted text. Any game in green is going to be a game that I think the Eagles are going to win fairly easily, while any game in yellow will be a close competitive game, and then red is a loss. Yellow, again, close competitive game that the Eagles still end up winning. You start out with the Labor Day game against the Florida State Seminoles. Now, do not count out Mike Norvell's squad this season, even though that team lost a lot of talent from last year. Jordan Travis, Keon Coleman, so many defensive players that are also gone to the NFL. This is still going to be one of the better teams in the ACC, and I think Florida State is primed for another college football playoff run. Even though they didn't make it last year, they might be the favorite out of the ACC this season. A lot of good talent comes in through the portal. They still have a lot of good talent coming back. DJU takes over at quarterback, and look, I like a lot of the talent on this Boston College team, but this one is a road game. It is on Labor Day. The short turnaround to play Duquesne, you should be able to win that one. I don't expect the Eagles to have much trouble with the Dukes, but I expect them to have a lot of trouble on the road against the Missouri Tigers, because Missouri going to be a heck of a football team this season. Brady Cook and Luther Bird, and that lethal connection is back. And even though you lose Cody Schrader, you get two guys, Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel, from Sunbelt teams to come in, and instead of having a true number one in Cody Schrader, you might probably have a 1A, 1B situation there with Carroll and Noel. Two guys that I really, really like and I think are very, very talented. You lose defensive coordinator Blake Baker, but I think the defense will still be pretty solid, even though, again, along with him, a lot of talent does leave. Missouri's going to be one of the better teams in the SEC this year. They're going to be a team that pushes for a playoff spot, and with it being a road game for Boston College, I think that is a loss for the Eagles, but I do think they beat Michigan State. Now, this is a real 50-50 game for me because I could see this one going either way. Two new head coaches here. Bill O'Brien is going to go up against Jonathan Smith. Jonathan Smith did wonderful things at Oregon State, but I think there needs to be some culture things that shift with this Michigan State team. There need to be some things that figure out internally with the program before they can prove it on the football field. And while the talent is there, Aiden Childs is coming in, and he's projected to be a really good quarterback for them. They got some good defensive pieces, and they're going to keep this one close. I think home field advantage, Thomas Castellanos will prove to be a little bit too much, and the Eagles start out the season 2-2. How about 3-2? I think they'll pick up a win against the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, but do not count out that team. They're usually one of the better teams in the ranks of Conference USA, likely will be again this season, and not a team that I think is going to go down easily, but I still think Boston College gets a pretty comfortable win there. And then I think they go on the road and beat Virginia as well. Now, this is another one where I was going back and forth on it. I wasn't really sure, and I ended up landing on the Eagles to win this game. The reason being, I think the Eagles definitely are the more talented team in this matchup, but don't count out Virginia this year. They're not going to be as bad as they have been the past couple of seasons. They got some good transfers coming in. There are some really good players coming back, and I think Virginia overall takes a step up this season. Not enough to beat the Eagles, even though Virginia does have home field advantage. And with that, you start the season out 4-2 before your first bye week, and then, again, some really, really hard games come here, and I don't think this 6-game stretch is going to be kind to Boston College. Nonetheless, you only have to win 2 of them. I don't think it's any of these 2 that come right after your first bye week. You have to go on the road on a Thursday in Blacksburg with Enter Sandman and that fan base rocking. Virginia Tech returns a lot of good talent this year. Bashal Tootin at running back, Kyron Drones at quarterback. They have some really good pieces at wide receiver. The defense, I think, is going to be one of the better ones in the ACC this year as well. Virginia Tech is primed and ready for an ACC title run. Believe it or not, Brent Pry's group is going to be really good this year, and I just don't see Boston College going on the road and defeating that team in Blacksburg. And even though this is a home game on a weekday, on a Friday, and technically you do get the extra day of preparation because your last game was on a Thursday, I think Jeff Brom and the Louisville Cardinals are going to be one of the better teams in the ACC also again in 2024. You lose Jack Plummer, you lose Jawar Jordan, you lose Jamari Thrash, you lose some defensive pieces, yes. But what they've been able to do in the transfer portal, they've been one of the big winners of this portal cycle. Jeff Brom's team has retooled, they've reloaded, and Louisville will be primed and ready to make another run at an ACC championship this season, and Boston College suffers the loss. So now they're back down to 500, and I think they fall below 500 right here. But this is another game here, much like the Michigan State game, much like with the Virginia game, are sort of 50-50 games for me. Well, 50-50 means you win some, lose some, right? I got you losing this one here to the Syracuse Orange. Again, I like this Boston College team overall, but I think especially if Castellanos can't develop that passing ability, there are a lot of really good defensive backs on the Syracuse team. They will make you pay, and I think Syracuse has a lot of good offensive pieces here as well. Kyle McCord is coming in from Ohio State. He's not as bad as a lot of people said he was with the program in Columbus last season. And again, he's got a lot of talent around him. I really like this Syracuse team under first-year head coach Fran Brown. I think he'll do really, really well. And again, Syracuse usually always has good defensive backs. Now you get a defensive back-minded head coach. I think this will be a win for the Syracuse Orange. And then I think you lose your next 2 here. SMU, I just think is going to be a really talented team that I think is ready to compete in the ACC right away. Preston Stone is a very, very good quarterback. SMU's got a lot of speed offensively and defensively, and I think the Ponies outrun the Eagles. They win in week 12, and I think North Carolina wins in week 13. Again, another one of those games where I think that one can fall either way, and North Carolina lost a lot of good pieces offensively, including quarterback Drake May, including some really good wide receiver pieces. You did lose some pretty solid pieces defensively as well, but Omarion Hampton is still there. Max Johnson's coming over. The quarterback play is still going to be solid. That lifts North Carolina over the Boston College Eagles, but I do think that Boston College is going to be able to round out the season with a win against the Pittsburgh Panthers, a team that just seemed like everything went wrong for them this year. While they'll be better this year, I think the Eagles round out this one with a win, and they very well may need that win to get to a bowl game. So I think they win it anyway. 5-7 is here. Much like a couple of the other teams I've talked about lately, I do like a lot of talent on this Boston College team, but too many question marks for me. Does the rush defense improve? Can they provide more pressure? Does Thomas Castellanos take that next step? I like Bill O'Brien. Don't count out this Boston College team. I have them just short of a bowl game, but it wouldn't surprise me if they made it to the postseason. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And as always, remember to play hard but tailgate harder. Next up, we'll dive back into the group of 5, talk about the Memphis Tigers. Goodbye.